The 1.6 EM buff is absolutely insane and huge for Venti, and holy moly, this changed absolutely everything. How many clickbait can I fit in 10 seconds? Holy god. Now I know I say that, but if you have seen my recent video on full EM Venti walking free dogs, you should know by now that EM Venti is absolutely disgusting. To get started, building Elemental Mastery on Venti is the way to go now, with the exception of your Goblet slot, which you should keep at Anemo Goblet. Moving on to weapon, R5 Stringless will now be the best in soft for Venti, even beating our R5 Skyward Harp. The Windbloom Odor, because it also gives you Elemental Mastery, is actually better than Skyward Harp at Refined 1. Leveling your Venti to level 90 is actually the most important thing to do now. And you can actually just keep your talent at level 1 and you don't really have to level them at all, although leveling them will be nicer and give you slightly more damage. A Venti Elemental Burst is not worth crowning at all now. That's how significant the buff are. As a level 10 Venti owner, I'm actually saying level 1 Elemental Burst is fine. So, let me walk through one by one on what happened. And of course, this is the part in every clickbait video where I tell you to subscribe to KEQING YouTube channel and follow my Twitch as well. Okay, thank you, bye. The base damage of Swirl has been increased. At level 90, it used to do 722 before the buff, and now it does about 860. The Elemental Mastery scaling also got changed, but it is still gonna have a diminishing return, but just not as much. Here you can see previously, the curve is trending down really fast, indicating that really high diminishing return. And now the graph, the trend is more linear, but the diminishing return is a lot less. However, there is still diminishing return the higher you get. Looking at before at 200 or 150 Elemental Mastery, we will previously do 64% more damage on our Swirl, and now with 150 Elemental Mastery, we will do 112% more damage on our Swirl, almost double. Similarly, moving on to the 500 range, previously we will do 175% more damage on our Swirl, and now we will be doing almost 3.2% more damage on our Swirl, again, almost double. And of course this goal, the higher you go, the better it is. So 1000 Elemental Mastery, previously we have 2.78, and now we have almost 5 times damage on your Swirl. And to summarize what that means, here you can see the yellow graph which represent the investment on Elemental Mastery. You can see Elemental Mastery just end up being much better until all the way at the end game where you have perfect like crit attack percent. And we're talking about like absolutely perfect, absolutely god roll pieces. For most people, because they do not have that, they fall somewhere into the middle, which means Elemental Mastery is just strictly better for a lot of people. In comparison to the last patch, building Elemental Mastery now, you're looking at up to like 50% damage gain in comparison to the last patch. Moving to the next ugly graph, the blue line here represents equipping a Stringless Refined 1 before the buff, and purple line here represents Stringless Refined 1 after the buff. And what happened before is that you'll build attack percent and crit, and then you'll slowly get more and more damage. The more crit damage you have, the more damage you get in total, right? So that's why this graph is slowly trending up. However, after the patch, you just build EM, and then after you're done building EM, like your main stat and maybe some sub stat, you're just done because you're capped out. So you just end up here, and then you'll be doing the same damage basically as if you have like perfect crit, perfect attack percent artifact. And so for most people, because you're looking at the middle, like mid investment, middle RNG, you're actually looking at a 50% more damage than before just by building EM. Similarly for other weapon as well, for example, this is a Skyward Harp, and you can see the graph is trending up a lot faster than Stringless because Skyward Harp have double crit on it. However, after the patch, once again, you'll just build EM at the beginning and you'll almost be done. However, do know that at the end here, you can see the graph once again trending up. The reason is because once you have like super god artifact, the crit end up being just a lot better from the Skyward Harp, so you still end up building like attack percent and crit. But this is at the god artifact category. You're looking at like super high rolled artifact. So again, for most people, if you're in the middle, you can just build EM and you'll get like 30% more damage than before. Now you probably did not know this, but when you're fighting a level 100 enemy, even when you're level 90, you actually only do 50% of your damage because of the difference in level. And transformative reaction like Swirl actually do not get that damage reduction at all. However, Elemental Mastery was just so bad that it was not worth considering before. But now, Elemental Mastery scaling is really good. Now there's a significant problem of building EM, and that is all your damage are now loaded into the transformative reaction. So that means if you cannot do reaction, you do no damage at all. And in my experience of playing Venti, it become quote-unquote much more difficult to play now because you always have to keep in mind of how you're gonna trigger a reaction, where before, again, you can just throw all your stuff out without regard and do a lot of damage. Now there's something very important about swirl that I have to explain first. So let's say you're fighting two enemies and you swirl both of them. So this guy will be taking 100 damage from swirl and this guy will be taking 100 damage from swirl. However, because there's two enemies, what swirl will do, it will spread this damage onto this guy for another 100 damage onto this guy, and this 100 damage will also be spread on this guy for another 100 damage. So basically, you're doing swirl damage twice. That is one of the reasons why swirl is so strong. However, if you're only fighting a single enemy and you perform a elemental skill that will swirl him, you'll only be doing one swirl damage because there's no one else to spread it onto him. So in another word, you'll be losing 50% of your damage if you're only fighting a single target. Now normally this is not really issues on Ventis because Venti elemental bursts suck everything in so well, but just keep in mind of that. But if you're not fighting two or more target, you cannot swirl twice, so you'll be losing too much damage to the point where elemental mastery build is not worth and you should just build DPS. This also applies if you're swirling Hydro, for example, on the current 12-2-2 floor. If you're swirling Hydro, for some reason it also does not swirl twice, and because of that, just going DPS build on Venti is gonna be better. Observe in here that you only see a single instance of the 781 Hydro number because for some reason Hydro only hit for once. However, for every other element, for example Pyro, you can actually see here that there's two instances of damage, 781 damage on every single target. That is because it hit twice for every other element. If this is the case, you must be wondering why did I do a Hydro infusion on Venti before? Now there's a lot of stuff I want you to look at in this frame, so be sure to pay full attention. Starting off, notice how we have visuals also. This lets us do Electro Charge onto the Venti Hydro Elemental Burst. Electro Charge work very differently in comparison to other element in the sense that it will keep both aura. Starting off with this small 5521 Hydro number, this is the Hydro Transformative Reaction swirl number. So this is the swirl number dealt by Venti on Hydro. Moving on to these purple 5521, these are the electric swirl number. Because electric charge keep both element, it keep both electro and hydro, so not only I can swirl hydro, I can also swirl electro. Additionally, when you're swirling electro, aka not hydro, it will swirl twice and it will do two number, and that's why you see two instances of this 5000 on the screen in comparison to only one for the hydro. Finally, onto this 9845. This is the electro charge damage. Because Venti is applying both hydro and electro, C is able to perform electro charge as well. So in total, we're getting 4 reaction off, 3 swirl reaction and 1 electro charge reaction. In total, I'm doing 26k damage at only 531 EM on my Venti, so this number can easily be improved by pushing much more EM on my Venti, for example to the thousands range. With the Elemental Mastery buff, we can potentially see new team surrounding Venti, such as this Electro Charge Venti team or perhaps Overload Venti team. And for comparison purpose, my Chinese national team with a fully geared Shangli and sending on a fully geared Bennett buff can only do 27k on a critical Vaporize. With all of those out of the way, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, what do I do with my Venti now? And I'll be honest, this is the hardest part of the video, so pay close attention. Starting off, you want to push your Venti to level 90 for sure now, because the base damage increase is actually a significant portion of your damage. So pushing Venti to level 90 is very important. For weapon, Elemental Mastery subset weapon are like the best now. Stringless is the best in slot, and R1 Stringless will beat a R5 Skyward Harp. And the event bow that you get before Windbloom Odor have Elemental Mastery as well, and is actually the second best weapon. Now the weapon ranking you see on the screen right now is what I would suggest to most players, and this applies to 99% of the player who do not have God tier artifact. Now because it is actually possible to get like attack percent crit and crit damage on your substat when you have Elemental Mastery main stat, if you somehow can have like a perfect Elemental Mastery pieces, these are the ranking instead. If you're curious why Ali Hunter is higher than Skyward Harp, and that is because it gives attack percent, and when you're building Elemental Mastery, you are missing an attack percent sand, so attack percent is slightly more favored when comparison to crit. This is more or less still true for DPS build because Weaponized Stringless not only give you EM substat, which is really good now, but also contribute a lot to the DPS build by having a really amazing passive as well. Similarly with like Windbloom Odor once again. Now, Elemental Mastery do not scale with talent, but DPS build does. So the lower your talent is, the better Elemental Mastery build is. But to be honest, again, speaking from a level 10 owner of a Venti, I will still play Elemental Mastery build. And if you're building Elemental Mastery build, it is totally fine to keep your talent really low. Maybe not 1, but at like 6, just because Elemental Mastery do not scale with talent at all. Moving on to the artifact, this is going to be very complicated, but we'll start with the basic. Most basic is to just build Elemental Mastery on your Sense, and then Enamel Damage Goblet, and then once again Elemental Mastery on your Circlet, which currently I do not really have. However, anytime that you're running like Bennett, which can give you a lot of attack, or perhaps something like the Thunder or Tales of Dragon Slayer book, which can also give you a lot of attack, then instead of running a EM Circlet, running a Crit Circlet is actually gonna be better. You will still keep enamel damage on your Goblet and EM on your Sands as well. And in rare cases, like Refine 4 or Refine 5 Stringless, where you can get a lot of damage percent from the passive, what you would actually do is to run EM attack percent on the free pieces. So for example, I would run EM on my Sands, EM on my Goblet, and then attack percent on my Circlet. And these are all interchangeable. So for example, if I find an Elemental Mastery Circlet, then I could just change this to attack percent. And similarly, if I have EM here, then I could just change this one to attack percent. But in Stringless R4 or R5, EM attack are your main stat to go. And of course, never break the 4-piece set VV set. This is the most important thing to do. So no matter what, try to go for a 4-piece set on the VV if possible. This is much more important than getting any substat on your stuff. Hopefully that was not too hard to understand, so just look at this picture if you need a better explanation. Now, you might have heard that Elemental Mastery pieces is actually a lot more rare than critical pieces, and that is true. However, I will still try to look for Elemental Mastery pieces, but just keep in mind that you could have really good crit pieces while you're looking for it. The reason that I will still push for Elemental Mastery is that if you end up just running crit, you can just give the Elemental Mastery pieces to your Sucrose or perhaps in the future to your Kazuha. So it is still worth trying to look for Elemental Mastery pieces or for your Venti. And the worst comes to worst, you just throw them to Sucrose, throw them to Kazuha. I know a lot of people must be asking, oh, what about Sucrose, what about Gene, what about Electro? And don't worry, I'll slowly go over it. However, for now, I can say Sucrose also got really good similar to Venti, and Gene got pretty good as well. But Electro honestly did not get really good at all. Honestly, Electro didn't get anything. Now, you might be confused on why. Keep in mind that this is not an Electro buff. This is just a transformative reaction buff. And the reason they're buffing this, I'm sure we all know why. That is because a certain Kazuha is coming up in the future. And what element is Kazuha? Is he Electro? I don't think so, right? Kazuha is an enamel character, so they buff enamel reaction. And in the process, Venti Sucrose also got buffed. And this is why you see Venti is capable of doing stuff like I showed you, because enamel reaction got better. But to summarize, building Elemental Mastery on Venti is really good now and beat out DPS build by a lot. However, do keep in mind that there are going to be situations where you cannot use Elemental Mastery. For example, if you cannot hit 2 or more target, or if you just cannot do reaction. So you have to be more mindful now when you're playing Venti, in comparison where DPS build, you just throw out your elemental skill, like whatever. But yeah, Venti definitely got a lot stronger as a result. There's so many things in 1.6 to 3 craft, like Elemental Mastery buff for Electro, Sucrose, and then the new Catalyst, potentially new character like Kazuha. So don't forget to subscribe and like and comment, so I'll see you guys next time.